winds of war I came, looking at a once great nation, now fallen into ruin and despair. I have seen the future, and it is mine for the taking. I've spent many years carefully calculating every move, working out each detail of my doctrine. I have waited far too long in the shadows, alone. But now, my time has come. Into this world of paranoia and despair, they'll turn to me as their ultimate leader. And my own world shall begin. They will know my name once more, as men knew it once, long ago. And this time, they will never forget it. Permit me to introduce myself. My name is Mabuse. Doctor Mabuse.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Between the Shadows. This is Kristen.
This is Kara.
Y'all, we just want to intro this. This is our third anniversary of Between the Shadows. We're a little bit late. It was actually on April the 10th, but we're calling this our Between the Shadows anniversary special.
I can't believe it's been 3 years.
I know. We started this podcast 3 years ago, and just for fun. I mean, we were in the
boredom
middle
with COVID.
And this actually started. I just want to give a little bit of backstory. Whenever we got together, we all know mine and Kara's story of Between the Shadows and why we were into Dark Shadows. Our dad got us hooked, and we won't go back over that. But the thought of the podcast really started when I had a friend of mine who was doing kind of a dark, beguiling podcast, and he asked me to be on it, which never happened, so I don't have a link for you or anything, but had a dark podcast and asked me to be on it and said, you can talk about whatever you want. And I said, well, fitting the theme, can I come on and talk about Dark Shadows? And he had the nerve to ask me, y'all, what's Dark Shadows? And oh man, I'm like, oh, you are in for a
You're
treat.
gonna get it.
So I went home that day and I called Kara and I said, hey, I've been invited onto a podcast to talk about Dark Shadows and Barnabas Collins. I said, but you realize that's all we do when we get together is talk about Dark Shadows. She would send me a text with a picture going, hey, look, Quentin, and oh, they just put Trask in the wall. And, so, that's how this really got started. And then when COVID hit, we had so much time on our hands. And so this is all of that to say, now that I've gone on for a few minutes now, that is how this podcast got started, Between the Shadows. And we really just started it for ourselves. We started recording what we were even talking about with Dark Shadows. And again, never expected this to have the following that it has. And it's really just been incredible. We want to say thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
We just kind of want to announce a few things. By now, pretty much everybody has heard about this Remembrance weekend in July. Help me out. What's the dates? I can't even
5 and 6.
July, yeah.
It'll be July 5th and 6th.
Yes. Fridays open to the public for the remembrance of Lara and the unseen footage of Night of Dark Shadows. You guys, Kara and I are going to be there. We are going to be there. So if you are there, come find us. We are having magnets printed out, and we would love to just hand them out until we run out, y'all. And we would love to schmooze and talk Dark Shadows with you, and maybe even get an impromptu interview of some fans and just remembering Dark Shadows. It is so exciting. I cannot wait. Yeah. We are so excited.
But this is going to be the last one, which
we have heard from several people. It's going to be the last one.
We definitely want to make the most of it.
So we would love to meet you. We would love to schmooze with you. We would love to chat. And the hotel rooms are sold out at the Burbank Marriott, but there are definitely neighboring hotels. So if you haven't gotten your tickets, and you can, please do. Oh, this is going to be so exciting. I can't wait. Yeah. But without further ado, we have a special episode for you tonight.
Joining us for this episode of Between the Shadows is director, screenwriter, an award-winning filmmaker who was the very well-deserved 2020 Rondo recipient for the short film The 1001 Lives of Dr. Mabuse. And on a more personal note, he's just a darn nice guy. So please welcome Mr. Ansel Faraj.
Mr. Ansel Faraj, welcome.
Very much for having me.
Yes, it is an honor. It is truly an honor.
Yeah.
Ansel, you have a hefty array of work, and all of which is fascinating, to say, for lack of a better word, and the film and the storytelling. It's excellent. So, first things first, tell us about your background in filmmaking.
I'm a self-taught filmmaker. When I was 6 years old, I said, this is what I'm going to do. And I did it. I started with action figures of Universal monsters on videotape, and then friends from school. And then suddenly in 2012, I had Jerry Lacey, Castle Lee Scott, and Laura Parker in my first Doctor Mabuse film, which was released theatrically in Los Angeles. And Fangoria magazine was interviewing me. And yeah, it's just been just building on that since.
Amazing. I love it. And from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, from what I understand, you're self-taught, like you said, you had like no background, no film school, no anything. So what inspired you? What inspired you to become a filmmaker?
Well, my parents took me to see Phantom of the Opera on stage long before there was the Phantom of the Opera movie. So this is early 90s. And I was very young, but I was fascinated by, how are they doing this? How did they do that? How did the candles come up out of the stage? How did they drop the chandelier and all these things? And so I was like, yeah, that sounds fun. I'd like to do that. And yeah, and then I started watching, Turner Classic Movies right there.
Yeah.
30th anniversary today of that channel's existence, and I would just sit in front of it and watch whatever would come on and absorb it. And I would read a lot of books from the library on filmmaking and movie magazines like Scarlet Street and Film Facts. And yeah, I just you just do it yourself. And yeah, don't have any connections to the industry from my family. So it's a lot more difficult than if you are born into it.
Yeah.
And yeah, you just do it. That sounds
Yeah, basically.
simple, but that's the truth.
Just no mucking about. I love that. Just do it. That'd be a great ad for Nike, by the way. Just do it. Just freaking do it.
What movies, inspired you in the beginning, really? Like
what are you passionate about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, Creature from the Black Lagoon was a big one. Obviously, House of Dark Shadows was a big one. That it freaked me out. I didn't see the whole thing when I first saw it on videotape. I got up to Carolyn's staking, and then my mom came in and took the tape out because
yeah.
But I liked the way that it made me feel. Like, it freaked me out, and I like that feeling. And I was just like, I want to do that. I want to scare people. What's other movies? Maltese Falcon.
Oh yeah.
My sister, she would watch nothing but musicals and stuff. So, we had like That's Entertainment and Meet Me in St. Louis. And my dad would show me Blade Runner and The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So I just had like all of it, from all angles. So yeah.
I will touch on that scene with Carolyn, because we were very, very young when we saw it too, when we were first introduced to it. And I think that scene gave me nightmares for ages. And I think I was 5, maybe 6, and for ages it gave me nightmares.
Yeah.
But just enough to make me want more. It's like, I want to see how this ends,
That's the kind of scared I like being.
Yes,
Definitely scared.
I was always fascinated with like the blood coming out of her, because there's that great shot.
Yes.
Blood, I'm like, whoa, how they do? And I used to like, I would take balloons and I'd fill them up with water and red food coloring and try to hide it. And a neighbor like took a a wooden stick and carved it into a steak for me, and I would like try to make it explode and get the blood to.
Oh my God.
I was
That's
also like
amazing.
as well, and
Real special effects.
I love that. That is when you were a kid, right?
when I was like 6 years old,
Yeah.
that's the
I love
backyard.
I love it. We are going to get into the Dark Shadows thing, but I want to talk about you, Ansel. I want to talk about you. I mean, you have, again, for lack of a better word, just this incredible knack for storytelling. How do you get your creative juices flowing? I mean, we've seen. I have to be honest with you. You didn't come into my personal radar until about 2020 during the Halloween special when we were all in quarantine.
Oh, yeah.
Like, Ansel, who is this Ansel Faraj? You know. so from then I started doing a little research, not like stalking-ish, but just like, who is this guy? And watching some of your movies, and the storytelling is incredible. And I'm just curious, how do you get those juices flowing?
I don't know. I mean, you have an idea, and then you just keep thinking about it, and yeah, I don't know how to answer that. It's just I just think a lot. I ride my bike and I think a lot, and then I think, well, what's cool? What do I want to see? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Every film is, it's like, okay, well, let's say Will and Liz, my romance that we did back in 2018, it came out in 2018. That was born out of just, I was tired of doing thrillers, and I wanted to show that I can do more and give myself a nice challenge and do something, because I don't want to just stick to horror, fantasy, sci-fi. And yeah, so doing a love story, do something that's clearly rooted in reality, and we all know what reality is like. We live in reality. There's no ghosts and vampires and all that. Well, at least in most realities. And yeah, okay, let's make a two-hander love story and see what that's like, and use what's around me. So, I'm from Venice Beach, and use Venice as a character, and you just put various elements together, and you get a bigger piece of a puzzle, and then, okay, let's go do that. That's a terrible answer, but that's
no, that is a great answer. That was perfect. It's definitely, no, it totally made sense, and it did answer the question. It did. So I saw Will and Liz, and I loved it, because it reminded me of that feeling that we've all had of finding that person, even though they're like nothing like you, but you still find that connect. I loved it. So
Thank you.
That was good. In addition to
maybe my favorite movie that I've made.
I love it.
See, I was gonna ask that next. A good answer.
I do want to talk about the theater fantastique. I can't talk tonight. I apologize.
Theater fantastique.
Thank you. Just an amazing horror anthology series. I love that. We're into Dark Shadows. We have a podcast about Dark Shadows, so of course this was going to interest us for sure. But adaptations of legendary Poe and H.G. Wells, but also your own stories too. And had some Dark Shadows fans, Christopher Pinnock and Jerry Lacey. So I mean, just tell us about
that. Yeah, nobody really asked me about that, but we just made the second Doctor Mabuse film, and yeah, I had ideas for movies, but they weren't. I knew that they wouldn't work in a full feature film length, and then mostly where this started with was I kept talking to Chris Pennock. I'm like, we gotta do the House of Usher. I always wanted to do a Poe thing. I'm like, we should do House of Usher. You'd be a great Robert Usher. Wow. So we did that, and I'm like, okay, this can be the start of a grander thing. And so then I pitched Chris the idea of let's do an anthology series like Night Gallery. And you would be the headline actor in it, and you'd be in each episode. And I had, Happy Home of the Murders Mahomes it started out as a feature film years ago, and I couldn't quite crack the script. The Invisible Man was something I always wanted to do, being a Universal Monster fan. Madame Lasur is a character that's just lived in my head for years. So it presented an opportunity to go and have fun and do them in much tighter sandboxes
Sure.
and much more affordable too. And yeah, and so then we did it, and each one was a lot of fun because you were constantly changing it up and bringing back certain players to play different roles,
Yeah.
and there was a lot more freedom with it. And so yeah, we did 2 seasons, and yeah, it's there's some episodes I like more than others,
Sure.
and
Mhm.
I still think about doing a season 3, but I would like to do it a little more uh, on a much bigger budget.
Sure.
And
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah,
Love
yeah,
it.
Well, I mean, that kind of takes us right into our next question about the Dr. Mabuse films. I mean, resurrecting a character like that who is, ages old, especially in the horror universe. I mean, well, okay, two-parter question. So when did you first discover Dr. Mabuse, first of all? And then what made you want to bring him back?
I had known about him for a long time because as I said, I grew up, watching classic film and doing all my film history research and studies. So I knew about him. I knew Fritz Lang had done the trilogy. I knew that there had been a couple other films in like the mid-late 60s. And I first saw it. I saw the Testament of Dr. Mabuse, which is the second film. I saw that when I was 13, 14, something like that. And then I kept thinking, I'm like, this cool. This is a character that's just so cool. I'd love to do something with this one day. And I had this idea for a story and wrote it out, put it away, and it just kind of sat there, and I kept thinking about it. And then when I tried to get to film school. I was rejected for knowing too much. That sounds very Frankensteinian, but it's true. And I said to my dad, I'm just gonna make movies because that's the only thing to do is make a movie someone's gonna notice. And so I had the idea, okay, well, let me do Dr. Mabuse. And then it still didn't happen for another couple years, but finally it happened. And yeah, it's just such a cool criminal mastermind guy, and he's
Yeah.
the influence on the Joker. He's influence on every Bond villain. He's an influence on, I mean, basically any sort of criminal mastermind. Again, same phrase. They all owe a debt to Dr. Mabuse. There's
Yeah.
Professor Moriarty and Sherlock Holmes, and there's Mabuse,
Yeah.
and except he's a little more supernatural-esque, and he's just a cool guy. I don't know.
I think so too. And you have actually a pretty interesting story about Jerry Lacey and Dr. Mabuse. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's kind of famous now.
Yeah.
I reached out to him and didn't get a response. And then, like a month later, we were casting for all the other characters. I got an email from him, and he said, "I don't know what this is. I don't know what's going on, if this is happening or not, but sounds interesting. Give me a call."
Oh, that's
So
amazing. That's
I
amazing.
called him up and talked to him, and well, I emailed back and I sent him the script. And so when I called him up, he said, well, I was expecting 15 pages and not 100 pages. And my wife and I, we were going to go to Italy for summer vacation, but I'm intrigued, so convince me. And I was young and panic stricken, but and so he said, yeah, I'll do it. And I'd already been talking to Catherine Lee Scott at the time as well, which was also pretty scary.
I can imagine.
Yeah. And then I told him, so Catherine Lee Scott and Laura Parker are gonna play these two medium psychics, and so that I think helped. But then yeah, we did it. They showed up at my house. We're all sitting around my dining room table, and we did a table read, and it was very surreal. It was very, very surreal because I was so young.
Yeah.
And I'd worked with a couple actors. I'd worked with Lyndon Childs, who's on Alfred Hitchcock Presents and The Munsters and Twilight Zone, and worked with Hitchcock and Marnie, and did everything. So I but then here's these people that like I grew up watching in the two Dark Shadows movies,
Yeah.
um, and now here they are, and I got to tell them what to do. And
That is fantastic. I mean, I'm sitting here blown away just listening to your story. I love it. I mean, when you, I don't want to say come from nothing because that makes, that makes you sound cheap.
no,
But
I totally have come from nothing. I've come from nowhere, and
yeah.
not ashamed of it. I'm proud of it.
No, I see. I mean, we have no ties. We started a podcast because it was COVID, and we love talking about Dark Shadows, you know. And I'm just sitting here blown away just listening to you. I mean, it's amazing. And what a great choice for Dr. Mabuse was Jerry Lacey. I mean, I can't think of a better person who would play Dr. Mabuse.
And I wanted to work with them not just because there's the Dark Shadows connection, but because they're also just great actors.
Absolutely.
And they've done so much outside of Dark Shadows that I think all the Dark Shadows fans kind of forget at times.
Yes.
They're not just Reverend Trask and not just Bogart. Like they're Jerry's, done so much and is such a great performer and also so generous. And I mean, yeah, here's I now kind of contradict what I just said. Here comes Reverend Trask into my living room, and I'm 20.
Yes.
And so it's like, okay, but I also know that he's worked with Woody Allen, he's worked with Claude Chabrol, he's worked with luminaries, and I still have to tell him what to do. But he immediately puts me at ease and is just sort of down to earth and like father figure, and yeah, we had fun.
Wow.
And then somehow I convinced him to come back for a second one, which was crazy because we hadn't even made the first one. And I'm like, okay, so if you read this, there's a part 2 that you have to do. And they somehow said yes.
Yes, of course. It's amazing. Oh, what a guy.
It's so comforting and like reassuring. Like you said, like once you got in there, they're just so gracious and so nice. Like
yeah, they're people. They're just people.
Yeah.
That's how we feel about you coming on our podcast. I'm just saying. I was like, really? Wow. I'm a little starstruck. I apologize. But oh my gosh. But giggly and
One of my personal favorites, I can't wait to talk. Loon Lake was probably my favorite. Like it just had those perfect chills, the witchcraft in it, and I wanted to tell you, like the one scene in that movie, I jumped out of my skin, literally, like, was when he was in the yard, just looking around, and then you see her coming down the stairs. And it's oh my god, I jumped out of my skin. It was so good.
I love the nod to Night of Dark Shadows, the devil take his own. So I mean
that was long before David Selby said yes to doing the movie. My buddy Nate Wilson, who plays the main protagonist of Loon Lake, and co-wrote together. He grew up in Minnesota. He grew up with this legend. It's very much a thing there. They believe it. It's a thing. And he said, I always want to make a movie about this. So we sat down, we wrote it. And so yeah, we're making a movie about a witch. And I'm like, here's her scene where she's going to be executed. Like, I have to have this line in here. And Nate's not as in depth with the Dark Shadows land as I am. So he doesn't know what I'm borrowing from. Like, the line was there. And then we're writing, and we wrote the character of Emery, the farmer, the farmer neighbor. And I said, I think David Selby might like to do this, because David and I had been talking for a while, and he kept saying, just give me, I just don't want to be in a suit, so I'll play anything as long as I'm not in a suit. Okay. Well, I called David up and pitched him this movie, and he said, yeah, that sounds fun. And then I didn't talk to him about the line until like we were already in Minnesota. And I said, so David, this is the line from Night of Dark Shadows. And he's, really? Like he doesn't remember. But it was a cool little Easter egg, and interesting in that, everybody's gonna think, oh, I put that in there because I had David Selby. But no, that line was there long before David or Catherine said
that's awesome.
But honestly, I just thought it was a nod to Night of Dark Shadows. I didn't even connect that it was David Selby. And I mean, Thayer David said that line, so I didn't really connect it with David Selby. It's like, oh, Night of Dark Shadows, yes.
If you know, you know.
Yeah,
I love it.
I kind of, now that we're on Night of Dark Shadows, I kind of want to, I caught wind, and I don't know how true this is, I caught wind that you were involved in kind of restoring Night of Dark Shadows? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, when I was 10, I contacted Darren Gross, who found the original footage, and I was like, what does this stuff look like? What's the seance look like? What is Angelique? Because I got Catherine Lee Scott's book, the Dark Shadows movie book, that has the 2 screenplays.
Mhm.
That, and I was, again, super young, but that taught me how to write screenplays and the screenplay structure and format. And so, and it's the full script, so you get everything. And there's the seance, there's the pool house, there's the skeleton, all that stuff. So I'm like, what does Angelique's misty face look like in the seance? And he would kind of try to explain to me, but I'm 10 years old, so who the hell am I? I'm just but then yeah, we got round to the first Mabuse film, and I was editing that, and Darren and I, we were talking, because I would talk to Darren. I've talked to Darren since I was 10 years old, so I've talked to him for like 25 years now. And basically since as long as he's found this footage, I've been talking to him. And it was gonna happen. The Tim Burton film was gonna, they said, oh, we're gonna put out the director's cut. And then there was internal politics that they didn't release the director's cut. They put the theatrical cut out. And so I said to Darren, like, what happened? And he explained to me. I'm like, well, how can we still get this to happen? Because it's got to happen.
Yes.
And so he showed me the footage, and then we just, and Darren over, since he found the footage in 1999, and after that he started recording everybody. David, John Carlin, Kate Jackson, Laura, Diana Malay, and Nancy, reconstructing the audio. So then he and I got together and we started going through the footage frame by frame, and then we put together a version. We showed it to Bob Cobert, and Bob Cobert respotted where all the music would go. We went through that, recorded lines again with John Carlin, and anyway, everybody says, oh, this thing's never going to happen, it's never going to come out. It's happening.
Yeah.
The
we
wheels
were
are
still a bit about this weekend in July. So
yeah. Now that was not, I shouldn't talk, but I will. That was not.
I don't want to get too
informed to myself nor Darren Gross. We didn't know about that until it was announced.
Really? Okay.
And contacted the powers that be about what is this, and they're not showing what we've put together.
Oh well, okay. At least I know not to get my hopes up. So.
You'll see 2 scenes, and I think I know which scenes they are. You're not seeing the full 128-minute version. We can't show that out of, there's Warner Brothers owns that film. It's
good to know.
But the director's cut is coming. I mean, everybody says the restoration is over. It's been so long. No, it's very much alive. The wheels are back in gear, and sooner than later, I think it's going to finally be released, and it's about time.
It is about time, honestly. I remember the first time I saw that movie, I was like, I mean, I like it, but I'm lost. I'm totally lost. I mean,
kind of tell where it's spliced.
Yeah, I'm like, what just happened? And it doesn't quite make sense. I mean, I'm trying to follow because I loved House of Dark Shadows so much, and it was just like, what am I missing here? But now that I know it's been 40 minutes cut, it's like, okay, now I get it. Yeah. So I can't wait to see what y'all have done. I can't wait.
That's exciting.
So while we're on the topic, how did Dark Shadows come to you? Like when did you discover Dark Shadows?
Yeah. My mom was original rant. Well, she used to ditch class to watch Dark Shadows, according to her. And she would tell me storylines when I was a kid. And she had Catherine's first book, Scrapbook Memories, and she started mine at Walden Books back in '86, and it's got Jonathan Frid's autograph and Catherine's autograph. And I used to look at it, and that also was part of my sort of understanding of filmmaking, of what I'm watching on TV as a kid. It's made. It's not just like appearing on the screen somehow. And so that was, yeah, I mean that was the introduction, and then I saw House of Dark Shadows before I saw any of the show.
Mm.
And then Sci-Fi Channel came into existence and they would run it, and I'd see it there. But yeah, it was through my mom.
Awesome. Yeah, through our dad too.
Yeah.
I mean, because we're not old enough to run home and watch it when we were kids. I mean, we ran home and watched it on the weekend when it was on DVD, but that's about it. But our dad was one of those first gen ones running home and ditching class to watch it. So. Let's see. I've got a list, so I'm like trying to
go through it.
The other one that really got me and I really loved was The Last Case of August T. Harrison. I mean, Jerry Lacey, of course, was in it, of course. And the whole H.P. Lovecraft thing was so cool to me. And Nathan did a pretty good job.
Yeah, he did.
I thought he was a pretty cool
Fantastic.
H.P. Lovecraft.
It's just that classic story of, we're afraid of the dark when we're kids, and guess what? There's actually monsters in the dark. We were right all along.
Yeah, that's a good one. That was a fun one.
So I mean, tell us about it.
What was your experience?
I mean, so we had the big premiere for the first Mabuse, and Catherine said, Ansel, you've got Humphrey Bogart and Jerry Lacey. You've got to make a mystery. So, okay. And I always loved H.P. Lovecraft. The Dunwich Horror is a very, like, it's one of my favorite stories. We've been trying to make that into a film for years, and still am trying to make it into a film. And so yeah, I had this again. Yeah, okay, Venice film noir, Jerry, Lovecraft, put it together, and yeah, it's we very simple, but fun. It was just me and Jerry and Nate walking around Venice, filming around Christmas break 2014. Yeah, 2014. And yeah, we worked hard on that one, and
it shows.
I wanted to show, because the Mabuse films are so very out there, and they're steampunk fantasy, and as Laura used to complain, like, this dialogue is Shakespearean, and like nobody talks like this, and so this was the chance to show, okay, let's do something normal. Kind of. It's not normal, but a little more grounded. We call it grounded. And I needed to grow up a bit as a filmmaker. This was a good film to use, and you've got a great actor that just sort of anchors it, and yeah, we had fun. Very fast shoot on that one. And then we went to film festivals with it, and then it came out, and that's, people still, like, I get a lot of messages about that one.
Yeah, it's a great one. It's a great one. And so you're up for Rondo again this year with Todd Tarantula, which is awesome. So and Todd Tarantula is your newest one, right? Except for Nick D, that I know you're working on. But
Todd Tarantula came out in March of last year, 2023, and that was a film I'd wanted to make since I was 17. And,
well, you hooked me with the time travel, because that's my thing. I love time travel.
Yeah.
And I love the whole story. Can you tell us about Todd Tarantula?
I mean, it's an LA mystery. It's an LA mystery. The young guy loses his motorbike, has to find it, starts uncovering that there's a grander conspiracy going on, and involves his dad and this guy Lucifer Gray, and I always wanted it to feel like a cartoon come to life.
Yeah.
Shot at live action, and it's rotoscope to have that sort of graphic novel. And very drug fueled, and not an easy shoot at all.
I can imagine. But yeah. I mean
I'm very proud of the movie. I did not have fun making it.
It's okay. How do you feel about it being up for Rondo?
I'm happy, and I'm hopeful. I mean, is it?
Are you shocked?
No. I mean, if I have 3 Rondos already, it would be. I mean, this is so. I shouldn't say this. It's. I mean, of course I want to win.
Please just say it. No.
You know, I mean, it's like it would be nice to win.
Or
Of course it
Especially for
would.
that one. But
Of course it would.
yeah, we had. It was it was a difficult shoot. I was doing everything myself. But I'm very proud of the movie. I think it's my favorite script that I've written, and David Selby as Lucifer was a lot of fun. You know,
yeah.
on that, and he was nervous about that. You know, we had lunch, me and him and Chip, his wife,
Mhm.
and he said, "I just don't know. Is there something redeemable about this guy that we can find?" And I'm like, "Well, you will bring about redeemable things bad as well." And then his wife, Chip, who's so nice. I mean, they're both so nice, such down to earth, wonderful people. And she's like, "David, this is one of the best characters you will ever play. This character comes from the Bible. Just do it. Stop thinking."
yeah.
Oh my
Then he
God.
sent me a photo like 2 weeks later of him in the outfit. He goes, "I found him. I knew you would." But that's so cool, especially after it like being in development hell for so long, and it was gonna happen at one point and it fell apart. It was gonna happen again and it fell apart. And then to see all these characters, finally come to life with all these people,
Right.
um, that was something. And also it was weird because I for the first time I was not the youngest person on set anymore. Like all the cast were young, new generation of actors, and seeing how they work and their ticks and their neuroses.
Mhm.
And I just felt like an old man at that point.
For once. For
But,
once.
yeah,
I love
I'm
that.
very proud of that film. Very proud.
The years that you've been making film, and stuff. I mean, is there something that you've come across, like an obstacle that you just come across all the time, or is that like the
Oh,
hardest
yeah,
thing that you could possibly?
absolutely. I'll tell
Yeah.
you one obstacle that's consistent no matter where you're at in your career or who you are: money.
Oh, of course.
Of course.
Certainly.
That money can get you anything.
Certainly.
That's it. That's the biggest obstacle.
That's a good one.
That's an excellent answer because it is the hardest one, no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well, I mean, for like young filmmaker, I have an autistic, aspiring filmmaker in my house who is getting ready to go into his senior year of high school. And I told him that I would ask, do you have any advice for an aspiring filmmaker who comes from nothing?
yes, and it's terrible. It's
Okay.
true. Do not do this unless you absolutely, absolutely, absolutely have to do this and cannot do anything else. Unless your life depends on this, do not do this.
That's
This is
excellent advice.
ruthless, brutal, somewhat terrible industry. It's unforgiving. It's a lot of sacrifice. It's a lot of pain, a lot of failure, a lot of going nowhere and trying and failing. I know so many people that they it's not broken them, but broken them
Sure,
financially, emotionally, mentally, otherwise.
Mhm.
Uh, Ignorance is bliss is a big, truth. Naivety goes a long way, but the honest answer is this is an awful industry. But if you cannot do anything else, and I've been asked this question several times by aspiring actors, writers, directors, and so on. It's terrible. But if you have to, then give it your best shot. Know that there's so many others out there that are trying to do this, that now we all have phones. You can film a thing, edit it on your phone, post it on YouTube or
Sure.
TikTok or Instagram or whatever the hell.
Sure.
There's so much competition, there's so much content. Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know how I did it. and I'm still like not there yet. Like,
Sure.
Sure.
just what I've been through in the independent scene and the hierarchy and climbing the ladder. Uh, I mean, I've had many dark days and many frustrating days where I'm just like, fuck am I doing with my life?
Sure. Sure.
Uh, and yeah, I would think long and hard. Think long and hard before you jump in.
Yes, sir. I will tell her. I appreciate being so brutally honest. I love that. That's, I mean, you can't sugarcoat that, you know, and I love that. That's amazing.
Nobody,
You should
nobody was brutally honest with me. I also didn't have anybody, you know, to know the truth. And also I came around at a different time. When I started, there was no streaming. There was no,
Yeah.
you know, I was at the tail end of where my first film got a theatrical release. That's kind of unheard of now.
Yeah.
Media while everybody says it's dying, which it's not, it's still like, there's no money. There is no money in this unless you're Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
But getting to like the Christopher Nolan status is a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and pain. Yeah, it's an unforgiving industry, but then there's moments where it's just like, oh, this is glorious.
Right.
But it's a lot of pain to get to those glorious moments.
I'm sure, and it shows in your work and in your films, and you're just a freaking nice guy. So, well, moving on to I wouldn't say happier topic, but we'll move on. So when it comes to Dark Shadows, I don't know if you've seen it front to back or whatever, or if you've seen it all the way through, but do you have a favorite saga or a favorite character or
I always say I love the idea of Quentin's staircase through time.
Yes, I do too. I love
Such
it.
a cool concept.
I love it.
Everybody's got their Barnabas thing. I think there's so much more to that show than Barnabas.
Absolutely.
And yeah, the staircase, just the idea of that, like, well, how do you build a staircase that's going to take you through different times at will, at random? I remember always being fascinated by that as a kid.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll just answer with that.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, yeah, same. Like when I was a kid, specifically that is what I always remembered, was just that staircase scene. Like it always had me mesmerized.
It was always, I mean, they time traveled all through this show, but that was probably
a new way of doing it.
My favorite ways that they time traveled. I mean, each thing didn't make any sense to me. Seance was a little too macabre, and Barnabas willing himself back there. I mean, that was cool, but can it actually happen? That's like a somewhere in time kind of thing, you know. But the staircase, wow.
Yeah.
You idea. See stairs everywhere, and it's like, are these stairs gonna take me through time? You know, I loved it too. I loved it too.
Watching Dark Shadows now, it kind of stresses me out at times because I've like worked with most of them, and so like I know, like I remember I saw a clip of it, and I won't say who it was, but they went up on their lines, and I could see the panic in their face, and they started doing like things that I know that's like, oh, okay, they're struggling here. And then I'm like, I can't deal with this because I've seen this happen.
Right.
And I want to like call cut, and you can't call cut because it happened in 1969, so it's too late. And so it's like watching like even the movies, which everybody, you know, there's different ways that you come at this show and this mythology. A lot of people come at it as the show. I came at it from the two films.
Right. I wanted to ask you about that because I know that was your taste.
That was my foundation or gateway into the whole grander world. But like even watching the movies at times, sometimes I'm like, well, these just feel like home movies because I see, okay, they're, you know, certain people are doing certain things that I know that they just do because it's who they are.
Sure.
You know? And so it's a bit weird now. It's not, I can't ever go back to being 5 years old and being freaked out by House of Dark Shadows and the Carolyn staking and the arrow going through his chest. Like, yeah, I don't know. Once you go through the looking glass, it all changes.
What a looking glass it is, though, I'm sure.
A very bizarre one. A very bizarre one.
I'm sure. Well, I mean, talking about that was on the list too. What was it like acting or working with the Dark Shadows actors?
Yeah, well, I mean, as I kind of said earlier, okay, I was so young, and I had to tell them what to do. I had to boss them around,
Right.
and they're actors. They want to be directed. You know,
Sure.
that's a lesson. Working, I mean, each of them are so. Catherine scared me when we started because it was Catherine Lee Scott, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had to, and I remember I even told her that, and she goes, "Oh, you'll get over that."
Yeah.
She was right, you know. But I've learned so much from Catherine. I mean, she's taught me so much. She still tells me what to do, and but you know, so nice. And I'm gonna repeat myself when I say, "Oh, they're all so nice," because they are.
Okay, but
They
yeah.
genuinely are. And yeah, I mean, Catherine's taught me so much about business and how to present yourself, how to do an interview, how to write a press release, how to, you know, get through a day, how to separate the fantasy of what the outside world sees, what you guys see. Oh, I'm Ansel Faraj, film director. Who I actually am, you know, this beach bum in Venice that just like
Yeah.
writes because he's got nothing else better to do with his life. That's
I married a guy like that, if it helps. He was a beach bum too. From California. Right.
Jerry, he's like a cool dad. That, you know, plays the stock market.
Yeah.
Laura was funny. Laura cracked. I mean, she wouldn't she wouldn't even have to say anything at times. She just like give me this
look.
No, I don't doubt it.
I'd start laughing, and the stories and the snarky remarks, and so damn funny. Like, I remember when we did the first movie, um, she didn't say much. She was just kind of like, you know, figuring me out, as Catherine would do a lot more of the talking.
Yeah.
And so then we had a day, and Catherine and Laura were both on set that day, and Catherine was in the house, and Laura goes, just, she can wait. You sit down. I want to talk. Okay, we'll talk. And then we talked for like 2 hours, and we didn't even talk about Dark Shadows. We talked about writing. We talked about filmmaking in general, and plays and literature, and you know, Gothic literature. And she says, you need to go and you need to read Freud's essay on the uncanny, and you need to but I mean, she mostly, what I remember about her was just how funny she was. Even when we did the Great Nick D, when we showed up, and she cracked me up with things I can't repeat, but like, digs at people, and just so damn fun, and so down to earth and motherly, and nowhere near the Angelique thing, and just yeah.
That's what people thought of her, and I'm like, that's not. That's who she plays. I was like, I would love to sit down and just have coffee with that woman, you know.
Yeah, I would call her up, and we'd talk on the phone for hours, and we'd scream about politics, and we'd talk about. I mean, what's the big thing is that, you know, I very, very, very rarely I'll bring up Dark Shadows with any of them, because it's like there's so much more interesting things to talk about than that.
They did.
And but yeah, so Laura was wonderful. Chris Pennock was insane.
Is he just hilarious? Like,
he seems like he would.
Yeah, but he would mostly just come away. I mean, he was electric. He was just so full of life, and you know, he'd show up and he would just have the craziest stories, and just like yeah. And then that one time I was on acid, and I was in the middle of the thing, and I forgot my lines, and then I said, I can't be here. I have to, and just like he would, you know, just insane stories, and you just sit there and and then that would roll into another one, and then another one, and again, also the people that he worked with, and the stories of New York back in the day. And he had one, he said, I was he goes, I got off the wrong stop on the subway, and I got up, and there's all these hookers, and there's this guy, and he was mugging this one person, and this one hooker recognizes, she goes, "Oh, you're on my story," and it goes running, and you just like just listen at like what. um oh my god, yeah, he was a volcano, but in the best of ways, and always wanted to do a good job. That was, I remember with Chris, he'd get very frustrated if he thought that he wasn't where his performance should be. And so there's, as a director, you learn, actors, you need to be best friend, father, boss, coddle them, help them, guide them, and but then they'll give you everything. And yeah, but Chris was always down to do literally anything.
Wow.
The crazier the idea, the more excited he would be.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I loved him in the trailer that you sent me over when we were texting back and forth. That was it just felt like that was so Chris. It was just so him, and John Carlin too.
John Carlin was, again, stories that he goes, yeah, when I was a kid, I used to deliver the newspaper, and one time I went up to this apartment and I delivered the newspaper to Basil Rathbone, and
oh my god.
And also, again, the raunchy raunchy stories, and
I've heard that about John Carlin.
but not to the degree that I think anybody realizes.
I'm sure.
Oh my god, the things that he would, and then when we did the job interview, he was there, Laura was there, and Chris was there, because we shot Catherine separately, the way that the story in that works out. And the banter between, and even Chris, you could like outshock anybody. The banter between him and Laura, John and Laura, was just, I wish that I could have recorded it. You're not going to, but like things they'd say to each other, how they'd one up each other, and even John at one point, he said something, and Laura goes, "Well, I can't beat that." And it was just, but it's so wrong. And
oh, that sounds like gold.
yeah, but also we would talk about, all John wanted to talk about was classic film and actors, and he would grill me, and he goes, who are the three best actresses in your opinion? And like, you had to, not that you wanted to line up your answers with his opinion, because he definitely had an opinion.
Sure.
And so I said Betty Davis and someone else, and he goes, okay, well, I agree with you there, but would you agree that Ingrid Bergman was the best because she had beauty and she could perform? I put Betty Davis second, and then I put Ingrid Bergman first.
Yeah.
We'd go on and on, and I would ask, so we would just talk about classic movies.
Oh, how fun.
In between all the raunch and all of his life advice, because he was always giving me advice on life and on sex and on politics and all these things, but I would just like sit there and just like soak it up and be like,
just soak it all in.
Oh,
what a great
yeah, Lisa Richards, she's really great.
Yeah, imagine.
Very, very professional. And who else? Then there's David, who is so, as I said, down to earth and real, and again, like Chris, wants to do his best, wants to be directed, but is just like a down to earth country boy. He's not.
I love that.
Yeah, and
Quentin was a whore, so he was.
They're all great. They're all a real family. They all really are. I mean, when we did Christmas Carol, like, this is.
That was my next question. I mean, go ahead, talk about it.
It was just like a high school reunion. It's the same. I'm like, nothing has changed. It's the same chaos and same frenzy. as
Yeah.
it was back in, 66, 67 when they were doing it there.
Right?
Uh, and yeah, they are a real family. They really are.
It's like no chemistry had left when you guys did A Christmas Carol. It was incredible. It was like Dark Shadows, but A Christmas Carol. All the chemistry was there. It was like, oh, I must have watched it. I swear I watched it like 5 times. I was like, I love this so much.
So
I mean, we had the quarantine Halloween special, and then so close we had A Christmas Carol too, which was
The next year, yeah, we did.
fantastic. Loved it.
Halloween was chaotic as well.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Yeah.
That was one of the things I was like trying to sneak off in my Halloween party that I had for my kids and our friends because we couldn't go out, So I'm sneaking off in the corner and everyone's like, "What are you doing? What are you watching?" I'm like, "This is dark." I'm like, nobody knows, like in my friend zone, nobody knows who Dark Shadows is unless they're family. And I'm like, "Oh, it's just, it's an online reunion of all the Dark Shadows." Like, well, put it on, let's watch it. And I've got like 10 people sitting around watching this Dark Shadows thing. I'm like, okay, this is what I'm talking about. It's right? They're like, well, who's this guy? And then who's this guy? And I'm like, just watch.
I wanted to make sure that Christmas Carol was more professional than the Halloween. Halloween was just it was a get together. It wasn't. I mean, it was a performance.
Right.
Yeah.
Christmas Carol, that was really important to all of us.
Yeah.
That's something even 10, 12 years ago, we talked about, do we do it as a movie?
Oh, that'd be great.
And everybody, because like how Dan Curtis wanted to do it as a separate episode of the show. But then there's a litany of Christmas Carol adaptations, so that kind of, I was like, why? I mean, I get why, but like in the grander scheme of marketing and having to, the outside world that doesn't know Dark Shadows, they don't care.
Right.
But how we did it, I think, was the best way. And Mitch Ryan really, like, he wanted to be as faithful to Dickens' texts, and he was calling out things that he didn't like. It's not from the book.
Oh, Mitch Ryan.
And then, we got Alexandra for the first time. We had David Hennessy. 5 different time zones and chaos and panic. And we recorded it on a Monday. Yeah, we recorded on a Monday, and I think it aired that Saturday. So it took all day Monday to get through it.
I bet.
And then I had like 3 days to put it all together and put all the music and the photos and the whole what have you, and footage of Chris Pennick from Theater Fantastique episodes into there as the Ghost of Future. And then I had to like run it for myself several times to make sure is everything where it should be. Is there any technical glitches? And then we aired it, and it was. And there was a lot of people that watched it, and big deal.
That's pretty fantastic.
A lot of work, but I'm again proud of it. Because then right after that we lost Mitch, and then it's really it's everybody's last sort of thing to do. A lot of work.
Yeah, it's pretty fantastic. I mean, like I said, I must have watched it like 5 times. But
I still watch it every Christmas time.
I'm trying to think, and I think the last thing that I wanted to ask you about, unless you have any other questions, I wanted to ask you about Nick D, because I mean that's coming out soon, and I mean without spoiling it, what can you tell us?
It's a comedy about a washed up porn star, Nick D, aka Nick Dick.
Is Nathan Wilson starring?
Nate Wilson pitched me this character like day one of me meeting him. He's like, I want to be this washed up porn star.
I can't wait.
And over all these years that I've known him, we've been talking out the story and what is it about, and so anyway, it's this washed up porn star Nick D, who goes on this odyssey to restart his mainstream acting career so he can win back his lost love, who's now like the equivalent of Meryl Streep.
Nice. All right, cool.
And it is, you get to see all the Dark Shadows actors as you've never seen them before. We also have Olan Jones, who's in Edward Scissorhands, and
Yes.
Killers, and Miracle Mile, and so funny and so cool to work with. We
Awesome.
have film director Sam Irvin, who directed Elvira's Haunted Hills,
Yep.
and yeah, I mean David Selby, he plays Nick D's dad, he's
Nice.
just white trash trucker that's married to an ex-stripper.
Yes.
Like, the furthest thing from Quentin Collins or Richard Channing or the
Right.
lawyer from Social Network. Catherine plays the head of an agency, very powerful agency. And she hates Nick D. She hates him, which is really fun to do. When we had Catherine there, the couple days that she was there, because Catherine has been with me and Nate from our start. So
Yeah.
then
Day one,
play enemies was fun. And Lisa Richards is in there, and like probably has the funniest character, which I'll just, everybody will find out when they see it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Laura is in it. It's her final film. And she plays Nick D's former acting teacher. And
Okay.
Very nice.
it was and I mean we shot her 3 months before she passed, and I knew that she was not well at all, but she wanted to do it.
Oh.
And Catherine said, "You got to have Laura in this. Is there anything for Laura?" And let me think. I said, "But is she? I know she's not well. Is she?" She was, "No. You got to have Laura." I'm like, okay, totally. And so then we have this thing, and she had so much fun, and yeah, I mean, she looks great in the movie too. I wish she could
I
have
bet
seen
she
it.
does.
Then who else? David, Laura, Lisa, Catherine. I feel like I'm forgetting people. It's like there's like 40 some speaking roles. We shot from April last year through September, a long shoot. It was 3 hours long. It's been cut down.
Oh, okay.
And it's coming out on Blu-ray and DVD exclusively, no streaming,
No stuff.
on June 11th.
June 11th. All right.
Wonderful. It's
Excellent.
coming up soon.
Do you have any other questions?
Just a fun one that's
Okay.
been going through my brain, in the years to come and the movies to come from
I
you.
feel like I've been doing all the talking. I apologize.
Do you have people on your list that you'd like to reach out to in the future, actors or
Yeah,
fellow
of course.
directors maybe? Or
Directors is kind of weird because
yeah.
all in the same boat. So there's people that love to hang out. Directors, I'd love to just chill with. Actors, oh my god, yeah, there's so many.
I'm sure the list is long. But
Off the top of my head, I can't even think of people off the top of my head. There's so many. Yeah, that's I don't know that I can answer that. A lot.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna leave a link to where you can purchase and watch Ansel's films and stuff. But can you tell us where, or can you tell them, not us because I know, but then where to find your stuff?
Yeah, my website, Hollinsworth Productions, and I'll spell it HOLLINS Productions.com, and it's got everything. It's got links where you can buy the DVDs and Blu-rays. You can watch things on YouTube, and yeah, that's sort of the central hub.
Awesome.
That's
Well, I think I ran out of questions. Is there anything else you want to add, Ansel, before we?
Yeah, I'll say this. I'll say this on the Dark Shadows, on a note of Dark Shadows, because I see a lot of misinformation online. That's fine, because not everybody. Dark Shadows reincarnation is not dead. It's very much alive.
That was the one thing I forgot to ask about.
That's what I want to hear. That's what I want to hear.
It's very much alive.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's nice.
That is excellent news. Excellent news.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ansel. It has been a joy. It's been fun, even with all of our technical difficulties and giggling and all that.
Dark Shadows. When is it ever going to go right? I mean,
Exactly. You know what? I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it.
And you'll be there in July?
Will you be there in
I
July?
will be there in July.
Yeah.
I'm
We
putting
will see you
together
there.
our-
All right. Well, I hope you have a good night. I appreciate you. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Ansel.
All right.